Witnesses from different centuries and regions across the Norse world describe the exact same phenomenon. Before battle even began, a man would start to change. The color would drain from his face, only to return in a strange, unnatural flush. His body would begin to shake, not from cold or fear, but from something deeper and nameless. The trembling grew stronger until it was impossible to ignore. Then came the sound, a low, rising growl that turned into something between a roar and a howl. He would sink his teeth into the edge of his own shield. His eyes, observers said, looked as though they belonged to someone, or something else entirely. Once the fighting started, normal rules of combat no longer applied. He did not react to wounds the way other men did. He did not slow down. He did not stop. He seemed completely unaware that he had been cut or pierced. The Norse called this state berserkergang, the berserkers going. And what was actually happening inside these men, both on and off the battlefield, is far more precise, better documented, and more disturbing than most modern retellings suggest. What almost every popular version misses is what happened to that state once the battles ended. A berserker serving a king was a terrifying weapon. A berserker without a king became something far more dangerous, a man trained for years to be nearly impossible to defeat, now operating inside a legal system that had never planned for someone like him. Before this story ends, you will see the specific legal mechanism, not military, that turned an elite warrior class into a systematic tool of exploitation. A sacred duel tradition meant for honorable conflict would be turned into an engine of seizure. Women would be transferred between households in ways the community itself viewed as completely legitimate. No laws were technically broken. A king who once kept 12 berserkers as his personal bodyguard would see his successors outlaw their very existence and hunt down the survivors. And the religious beliefs that once made the berserker holy would be deliberately replaced by a new faith that branded the exact same behavior as demonic possession. This is the history preserved in the sagas. It is far darker and more complex than the popular myth. To understand the berserker, you must first understand the world he lived in. The Norse societies of the 9th and 10th centuries were not chaotic warrior cultures. They were intricate systems built on obligations to family, lords, communities, and law. Without standing armies, permanent police, or centralized courts that could enforce rulings from afar, the entire social order depended on one thing: reputation. Reputation was not just social status, it was infrastructure. A man seen as honorable could build alliances, win legal cases, and expect support when rivals challenged him. A man labeled nithing, a coward, oathbreaker, or someone who had forfeited basic human standing lost everything at once. His word meant nothing in court. Anyone could kill him without consequence. He could form no alliances or partnerships. In a world without anonymity, where you could not simply move to a new city and start over, this social death was devastating. Into this world stepped the berserker, a figure both feared and deliberately positioned. The word berserker likely comes from bear shirt, referring to a warrior wrapped in bear-like fury, or possibly one who fought without armor, relying only on his trance. Both ideas point to the same truth. What defined him was not his weapons or rank, but the state he entered. The Ynglinga saga, written by Snorri Sturluson, but based on much older oral accounts, describes them clearly. Odin's men went without mailcoats, raged like dogs or wolves, bit their shields, and were as strong as bears or bulls. They slew men, and neither fire nor iron could harm them. This was called berserkergang. This was not poetic exaggeration. Multiple sources across time and geography describe the same observable changes: the flush, the tremor, the shield biting, the apparent immunity to pain, and the altered eyes. The popular theory that they ate fly agaric mushrooms before battle falls apart under scrutiny. In effective doses, the mushroom causes nausea, confusion, and weakness, hardly ideal for frontline combat. A more credible explanation lies in physiology, extended fasting, sleep deprivation, cold exposure, rhythmic chanting, and percussive rituals. These methods, refined over generations, could trigger extreme adrenaline surges, pain dissociation, and narrowed focus, a genuine altered state of combat performance. What made berserkers unique was that they cultivated this state deliberately over years. Young men with the right mental and physical traits, high stress tolerance, elevated pain threshold, and strong dissociative capacity were identified and trained. The Ulf Hedner followed a similar path, emphasizing speed and pack-like coordination rather than raw power. Religiously, they were Odin's men. Odin was the god of frenzy, poetry, and ecstatic sacrifice. The berserker trance was seen as the god entering the warrior, making their violence sacred and their apparent invulnerability divine favor. Harald Fairhair, who unified Norway in the late 9th century, kept 12 berserkers as his personal guard. He deployed them as shock troops at the front lines, where their psychological impact alone could break enemy formations before steel even clashed. But the real danger emerged when these men operated outside royal control. The holmgang, a formal duel on a marked cloak or small island, was an ancient respected way to settle disputes when community mediation failed. Each man could use up to 3 shields. Stepping outside the boundary or bleeding excessively could end the fight. The stakes were set by the challenger, and the loser forfeited whatever was named: land, silver, or even people. This system worked when opponents were roughly equal. It became a weapon of extraction when berserkers, trained for years to be nearly unbeatable in single combat, began issuing challenges professionally. A berserker could arrive in a district, target desirable land or a woman, and formally challenge the owner or guardian. The target faced an impossible choice: fight and almost certainly die, refuse and become a nithing, or settle by handing over the stakes, property, wealth, or the woman herself. Many chose the third option. The transfer was considered fully legal. The sagas document this pattern repeatedly. In Egil's saga, a berserker named Leot the Pale challenges a farmer for both his land and his daughter. Egil Skallagrimsson intervenes and defeats Leot by clever tactics, exploiting the berserker's frenzied state to force him outside the boundary. But such rescues depended on rare heroes being present. Most cases had no Egil. Women were frequently the prize, widows with land, daughters of families without strong protectors. Their consent was not part of the legal equation. The duel decided everything. By the late 10th century, communities adapted. Farmers made pacts to support each other against such challenges. Local strongmen offered protection in exchange for loyalty. These informal systems showed that the formal law had failed to contain the problem. After Harald Fairhair's death, central authority weakened. Berserkers who once served kings now operated freely. The holmgang professional became a recognized threat. The end came in the early 11th century under King Olaf II, Eder Saint Olaf. He sought to unify Norway under strong royal power and Christian rule. Berserkers represented an independent power base with their own divine legitimacy, something incompatible with centralized Christian kingship. Olaf criminalized berserkergang itself. Men entering the state could be outlawed or executed. He offered conversion and renunciation. Refusal meant death. The purge was swift and effective. At the same time, Christianity reframed the entire phenomenon. What was once Odin's sacred frenzy became demonic possession. The same behavior now, evidence of evil forces working through a corrupted soul. This theological shift destroyed the berserkers' social and spiritual legitimacy. The terror they inspired depended on what people believed they were. Change the belief, and the power collapses. The Grug's Law Code in Iceland echoed this, making the state itself illegal. By the mid to late 11th century, the berserker class as a recognized social phenomenon had largely disappeared. Some converted. Others joined the Varangian Guard in Byzantium, finding new service in a Christian empire. Many simply vanished from the records. The berserker did not die because he was defeated in battle. He disappeared because the specific conditions that created and sustained him, the training, the pagan theology, the legal loopholes, and the fragmented political order, were deliberately dismantled by a new state and a new faith. The word berserker survived for 1,000 years, but the complex reality behind it, the physiology, the exploitation, the sacred status, and the systematic predation it enabled, was mostly forgotten, reduced to cartoonish rage. The farmers who no longer lost everything in forced duels, and the women who were no longer legally transferred, left no chronicles. But the sagas, law codes, and chronicles preserve the mechanism clearly for those willing to read them fully. The berserker was never inevitable. He was the product of a precise alignment of training, belief, law, and power. Remove any piece, and the phenomenon loses its meaning. The real question is not who entered the trance, but what kind of systems allow such trances to become profitable. End script voiceover. This story is based on historical sources including the Icelandic sagas, Norse law codes, and accounts by Snorri Sturluson and Saxo Grammaticus. While dramatized for storytelling, the patterns of berserker behavior, holmgang exploitation, and their eventual criminalization under Christian kings are well documented in medieval texts. If this one hit differently, tell me in the comments, which part changed how you saw the berserkers? More deep historical stories like this are coming. Hit subscribe, leave a like, and turn on notifications so you don't miss them. See you in the next one.